If you've ever wondered how do you actually make legitimate revenue on Instagram and thought to yourself, do I only have to do high ticket one-on-one clients? Or is it possible to actually generate $50 to $100 per day on Instagram using a low ticket offer? If that's you, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. What's up, coach? Thank you so much for joining me in another podcast episode of the PT Profit Podcast. I'm your host, Beverly Simpson. If this is the first time you're hanging out with me, welcome. I'm super pumped that you're here. As a former district fitness manager for a national gym, responsible for bringing in $2.1 million per year and building my own two multiple six-figure businesses online, I've learned a thing or two. And today we're diving into what it actually takes to create a business from Instagram and make sales every single day. Because if you're anything like me and you're new to the online space, maybe you're not new to coaching, but this is the first time that you're coming into the space, you might be falling into one of the most common traps that I see a lot of smart and struggling coaches get into, which is falling into the feast and famine cycle of launching. Because what we're traditionally taught is that you come into the space and then you just add a ton of value. You spend 90 days, 60 days building know, like, and trust, pouring everything you have to your community to give it all away for free. And then in the last 30 days, or maybe even 2 weeks, you're going to decide to do a launch. So what this typically looks like is create a ton of content for free, then invite them into a free lead magnet, and then invite them into a sales mechanism, whether it's a call or a training, and then present an offer, and then you're going to bada boom, bada bang, make 7 figures. In fact, I just saw this ad yesterday that said, I made a 7-figure business in 7 days using AI. And honestly, listen, you have to really ask yourself, if it really was as simple as putting into ChatGPT, how do I make a 7-figure business, and then going ahead and doing what ChatGPT said, then wouldn't we all be flying around in our personal private jet celebrating our biggest month to date? No, it's not that simple. And honestly, it's not because it's a lack of information. I actually do believe that AI could spit out a 7-figure business information blueprint plan for you within 30 seconds and then show you how to do it in 7 days. The problem is not the information. The problem is actually in the implementation and in the actual skill of doing what it takes. Because think about it like this. I could tell you how to lose 100 pounds in 30 minutes, maybe even shorter than 30 minutes. I can tell you how to do it, but that doesn't mean you're going to lose 100 pounds in 30 minutes. So people get it just a little bit twisted when it comes to business building and these claims that make it sound too good to be true. Now, if you're listening to the show and not watching it on YouTube, I quoted too good to be true because unlike fitness, the truth of the matter about business and speed and how fast someone can get a result really ultimately comes down to 3 things. Do you have the strategy in place that you are optimizing, the system, structures, and strategy in place that you're optimizing, and you're literally just doing one thing and not program jumping? That's number 1. Then number 2, do you have the skill to execute the numbers of what it's actually going to take? And then number 3, do you have the emotional resilience to move through other people's hurt? Meaning, hearing other people troll you or say horrible things about you on the internet? Do you have the emotional wherewithal to withstand a no? Because most people will say no, and that's a good. In fact, when we start getting into the actual strategic plan of what it takes to generate $50 to $100 a day on Instagram, even with a handful of followers, then you'll even know that you'll start to see that it takes 20 views of an ask, meaning 20 views will yield 1 sale. Now, I hear those odds and think, wow, that's so wow, I didn't realize how easy it could be. A lot of people, when they're first starting out and struggling, they see 20 people need to see it and they get 1 sale. They spend their time focusing on the 19 people that said no and wonder why, instead of looking at that one person who said yes and they go, oh man, but it's 1, it's not enough. And that is perpetually a dangerous cycle to be in, because take it from a former perfectionist, former high achiever. Listen, I am still a high achiever, but not a struggling high achiever, meaning that I'm not constantly, or at least I work to not constantly be in this perpetual cycle of it's never enough, it's not enough, and then just keep moving the goalpost. This is something I used to do, and I see it a lot in my clients. So if that's you, I get it. But those are some of the barriers that people experience when they're actually trying to start and scale a profitable business. Because when you actually pull back of what it actually takes, business is simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple. Attract people with a problem and solve it the fastest way possible. That's it. That's all you're doing. Now, the feast and famine cycle of launching, I just want to make it abundantly clear. I'm not saying that launching is bad. I'm not making launching wrong. In fact, there are essential promotional periods inside of my pressure-free, permission-based sales systems that I like to make. I love them. They're important. They provide a lot of goodwill. And when I say, stop building no like trust and stop adding value, that does not mean that we're not going to help people. I'm not saying that we're going to go and be mean on the internet and make people wrong. That's not what I'm saying. The reason why I share this in the way that I share this is because so many of my smart and struggling coaches step into this job. They come into wanting to do this because they feel like I'm doing everything right and I want to just help people. And of course you want to help people, but part of helping people is setting boundaries. Part of helping people is asking them to say yes to themselves. Part of helping people is showing them how effective it can actually be to invest in themselves, whether it's time, money, energy, effort. And so that in itself can be very valuable. Now, I've done a ton of podcast episodes on how to give everything away for free and still get paid to coach because it is possible. And it comes down to what I said earlier, which is that it's not about information. You're not selling information. What you're really selling is the implementation of how fast someone can apply and get results from the information you share. And I probably don't have to tell you that in the information age, it is so conflicting, the amount of pseudoscience and science and information that's out there, which actually causes more confusion. So your clients are more confused than ever, despite the amount of information that's out there. Which is exactly why your work is essential. It's needed. There's a reason that you want to do this and not do anything else. So let's just walk through the 4 main things that we really need to look at when it comes to how do we actually start generating revenue online on Instagram, even if you're starting from the beginning. Okay. The first thing that we need to do is just really look at the offer itself. Now, most people are like, just post value and then people will tell you when it is, like, survey your audience. But listen, when you survey your audience and ask them what they want, that's like asking your kids, what do you want for dinner? And they're going to raise their hand and say mac and cheese, pizza, ice cream. They're going to tell you the things either that they want that might not necessarily be what they need, or they're going to tell you the things that they think you want to hear. Or they're going to tell you what they think that they need to get what they want. So what does that mean? So for example, when someone says, oh, well, I just want to be more confident. Okay, great. Dig. What does being confident look like to you? What does that mean? What will happen for you when you get all the confidence in the world? Because what they're telling you is that when I have more confidence, then I'll be able to get what I really want. Okay, because what we really need to do when we're looking at the offer, okay, is because what we have to do, the small offer, the tiny offer, the front end offer, I call it the front end offer, but because I like to build an email list of customers, people who buy. Because you may or may not have heard people say things like, oh, well, if you have a low ticket offer. Now, when I say low ticket, I'm talking about, low ticket compared to what, right? But for me, and the way that I define it is I really think of anything that is, $9.97 and below. Okay. And now there's going to be even tiers of low ticket offers. Now, when I'm talking about like a lead, like a low ticket lead, I'm like the first buy. I'm really looking at the $9 to $97 range. And then we're going to have some other ads on top of that. because you're a store, right? Now, do you have to? No. Some people are super successful when they're just focusing on one offer. Okay. So it's not about doing it right. It's about finding what is going to work best for you. But for me, in the context of this podcast, and I'm talking about a low ticket lead anywhere from the $9 to $97 range. Okay. And it also depends on the market and so many things, so many factors. But for the purposes of this, in an effort to keep it simple, we're going to say $9 to $97 is kind of the range. This is the low ticket lead range that I'm talking about for the purposes of this podcast. So start with the offer. What is the first win that someone could get? So if we're thinking about your offer stack, let's say you have a premium offer that is a full body transformation, mind, body, spirit, soul, whatever it is, okay? A customized step-by-step protocol, okay, whatever that is. What is something that your client needs to believe, needs to know in order to say yes to that program, in order to be like, oh, you're my coach? What is the first tangible win that you can give your clients? Because ultimately, when we're talking about value, when we're actually talking about know, like, and trust. Now, the reason I'm so anti know, like, and trust is because my coaches who struggle come into this space who have such a bleeding heart and all they want to do is help people. Then what happened is they start to feel like I need to do everything for you. And I just relate to that. I relate to that. I know what that's like. I know how hard it has been for me to put boundaries up for my clients, to put boundaries up for my family. It is hard for me. And so I relate to this so much, which is why I have such a huge passion for it, because with my children, boundaries are essential, and it is so that I can pull them closer. And it's the same for my clients and for my family, and they're essential. And so this is a boundary around how I'm going to serve you. It requires them and you to look at like, well, I'm going to help you as long as you're going to help yourself. Because here's the know, like, and trust kind of perpetuates, in my opinion, that you need to get people to like you, get people to trust you. But you know who loves me the most is my husband and my children, and they never bought from me. And my mom, too. Sorry, Mom. My mom and my husband were my number one fans. Their Instagram and Facebook page was identical to mine because they loved me so much that they wanted to share, they wanted to support me. And I know a lot of you, I've spoken to many of you, don't have that same experience. And I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful every single day about how grateful I am that I have the support of my husband and my mom and my family. And they've never bought from me. So what we really have to look at is what is the customer journey that people actually go from never hearing of you before to becoming an actual client. And that is the ladder, what I call the ladder of believability, where they have to know you. You have to be visible. You are in a attention market, meaning you're not in competition with anybody else except attention. Okay. So you want to be number one in your niche, then you got to be the most visible. You need to be the most top of mind. So now people hear that and they panic and they're like, what am I going to do? I don't want to post 10 times a day. Okay, you don't have to. That's why we actually use ads, because we acquire customers so that we get paid every single day for our ad and then invite people who are ready to say yes in a pressure-free, permission-based way to become clients. Oh my gosh, this business model changed my life. It got me out of doing so many things. Two main things, actually. First of all, it got me out of gambling on my ads. Instead of me like feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to make a client, I got to blah, blah. I just got out of the pressure. I got out of the chase. This also changed what the experience was like for my clients, because I realized that the energy that I kept putting out there was like, I'm going to do all of this goodwill. I'm going to do everything. And then I would get 10 sales instead of the 20 that I wanted, or maybe even 20 that I needed to cover my ad spend. And I thought, oh man, it's just not enough. And so these 10 people who had invested $2,000 at the time, their first investment ever, right? That's not something to scoff at. And I would have this attitude of like, "Oh, I'm such a loser. I didn't do it." And when instead I wanted and needed to shift my focus towards how incredible it was to get to serve these 10 people who said yes to themselves. I needed to figure out a way where I could shift my focus. And this is what I did. I started to build an email list of customers, and it changed my life because I started to realize and think about, well, when was the last time I went into the restaurant and demanded something for free and then ordered? Nothing. And then I started to realize that this podcast and this content and this Instagram and all the Instagram effort that I'm putting into my content, it's not free. It takes time, even if it's 10 minutes. It's time I can never get back. I pay a team. I'm responsible for people's well-being so that they can help you. So that's people just get this shifted and they get this twisted up when it comes to adding value and building know, like, and trust. And inviting someone to say yes to themselves, that is valuable. And we mess that up. And it's not your fault. The internet, it's the internet world out there. They teach you that this is what you have to do. So when you're new and you're coming into the space, and maybe not new to coaching, but coming into the space, you start to feel like, oh man, I'm behind. And you kind of, what I often see is people do one of two main things, is that they end up undercharging for their services because they accidentally try to be the cheaper option, and then they try to stand apart by being the cheaper option, which attracts the wrong people, and it ends up being a nightmare, and you end up being in this perpetuate vicious cycle of never enough, as soon as this, then that, and it just ends up being a mess, and it's unfortunate. And so then what people will tell you is they'll say things like, oh, well, nobody who's going to buy a low ticket offer is going to buy a high ticket offer. It's a different market. Well, then if that's the case, then wouldn't the same be said for someone who invests in something for free? And then maybe you've heard traditional, people telling you, oh, it's just as much work to sell something high ticket as it is to sell something low ticket. Now, if you've heard that before, then and let's just say, okay, that's true. Then couldn't the same be argued for it's just as much work for something to sell something for free as it is to sell something that's low ticket? And I would argue yes. But I would also argue that the quality of client is higher when they've invested in themselves. They show up, they say yes to themselves, they do the work, or maybe they don't do the work, but they've at least raised their hand and said, I'm interested. So all that to say, so when we really look at the truth of what it is to add value, what we're looking at and what we're really looking at when we're looking at the truth of what it is to build know, like, and trust, what we're looking at is what the belief in you. So you have to be visible, but the belief in your offer. They're not Googling what's the second best way to solve problem. They're Googling what's the best way, what's the fastest way, what's the easiest way. So they need to believe that your offer is the best, fastest, most convenient way to get whatever the outcome is. Now, that doesn't mean promise a quick fix. That doesn't mean lose 10 pounds in 10 minutes. That doesn't mean a quick fix. But it is they're looking for the path of least resistance. So I had a client once that said, oh, well, I got this feedback that if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. And so they wanted to change the verbiage of their promise. And listen, I get that. I definitely get that. So instead of, so you want to be honest with yourself about what is the first win that you can communicate to demonstrate that they know that they're going to win if they do all these things. Even if you are just promising the tools, the education, the implementation support needed in order to get to what seems too good to be true. And what also pains me is that people will compare their fully realistic, smart style goals of what is actually capable and think, oh, it's too good to be true. When in the reality, people who are measuring that promise up against something like, drink your urine or do a coffee enema and clean your gut. Like, I mean, the internet is the wild, wild west, and I probably don't have to tell you what's out there. But if you're anything like me, we kind of get into this, caught into the confirmation bias and we start to think that, oh, everyone's talking about the same thing that we are. But go to TikTok, go to Pinterest, go to Google and see what people are actually sharing that is preventing them from actually achieving what it is that they want. Okay, so they need to believe in your offer and they need to be clear on what problem is this solving and is it what I want? Not what they need, but what they want. And when you can make this offer so irresistible that literally it sells itself. Think of it like going to the grocery store. Like I'm going in, I'm going to get avocado, and then right next to it there's some like jalapenos, red onions, and maybe there's also some Roma tomatoes. And you look and you're like, oh, I can make guacamole. And you didn't have the intention to make guacamole, but then you see how easy it is to make guacamole because it's right next to the avocado. Haven't you ever noticed that there are like huge cherry tomatoes and then right next to it it'll be, or not cherry tomatoes, but like big beefsteak tomatoes. And then you'll see basil and mozzarella right next to it. And you're like, wait, why is that? Because people will go in knowing, oh, I need this tomato. Oh, but this is so amazing. And I can take the leftovers and make a salad or whatever. Or I'm going to say caprese, but I don't know if that's how you say it. So I was so the when your offer is so irresistible, when it is so good that it sells itself, there's literally no pressure required. Do you see the grocery store standing outside being like, hey, like me, pick me, love me? You know what that's from, right? Grey's Anatomy. No, you don't. People are going in there every single day because it's solving a problem. And if you're sitting here listening to this and thinking, yeah, but I'm not the grocery store. Well, but of course, but you are a store that is providing a need, not a want, a need. And then we start to get into the emotional side of like, well, maybe it's not valuable, maybe I'm not valuable or whatever the case is. And I have to tell you, as someone who's been battling this still continuously, I still deal with this. No one ever gets to graduate. We're all having a human experience. But if you don't value what it is that you bring to the market space, how can you expect anybody else to? And that is your work when it comes to building a business. And people who make 7 figures, 8 figures, 1 figure, it doesn't matter. We all are experiencing a human condition. We're all asking ourselves the same things that you are. No one is exempt. It's just how fast can they move through the disappointment? How fast can they go all in on themselves to be like, this is it? So then once you have this offer that you've put together, that it's anywhere from $9 to $47 or $9 to $97, now we get to understand the data. What does it actually take to sell it? Well, traditionally, for me, my experience, even we're working brand new, no experience, it takes 20 asks. Almost a 3 to 5% conversion rate. So 20 asks, meaning 20 hits on a sales page to say yes, whether it's either in the DM, whether it's a checkout link, it doesn't matter, the vehicle, but 20 asks will yield 1 sale. Okay, so then your work becomes, what do I need to say today in order to generate 20 views to my sales page? Okay, and this is where step number 3 comes in, conversion content. When you can master the art and science of selling without selling, then people will purchase every single day without you saying, go buy my thing, go buy my thing, go buy my thing, go buy my thing. So for me, what I like to do, I like to break my conversion cycle into weeks of interrupt, inspire, invite, and implement. Because it is really important that you have at least 1 promotional period during the quarter. I like to do it 1 a month, but sometimes that could be a little aggressive. And there's so many reasons why, but I'll just say 1 promotional period per quarter. What does that do? This invites people to say yes to themselves. This is you actively promoting make a buying decision. This is like, go click the link in the bio, DM me to register. Sales ending. You are actively doing a promotional period. So now people start to panic on Instagram because when they post promotional content, traditionally speaking, it is true, engagement goes down. And engagement in terms of the algorithms on Instagram's content, meaning Instagram has one goal: keep you on the platform as long as possible. Okay. And so the algorithms, when the wants of Instagram align with you, then it's a happy union, and algorithms and the content will fly out. Okay. When you're in a promotional period and you want someone to make a buying decision and you're inviting them off the platform, then usually people are like, ooh, no. And Instagram goes, ooh, no, I don't like that. So that's why everyone moved away from saying link in bio, because link in bio usually meant get off the platform. And Instagram went, nope, don't like that. So then everybody moved to comment this word and DM me this, and because that is engagement on the actual platform itself, and the algorithm like that. Oh, so this is why and in addition to that, when was the last time you really engaged in a promotional period, in a promotional post, something that was like, facts and features, go buy this, go buy this? Usually not. Usually you see it and go, yeah, I need that great reminder. And then you go and buy it. Okay. My least converting post or engaged post is my highest converting. And people ask me, how do I know that? Well, I know that because the call to action is DM me word, and I can see when the word comes through. Also, people will say, hey, you posted this about yourself, and that's me. So that's how I know that this is my highest converting, even though it's my lowest viewed, even though it's my lowest, engaged, not very likes, not a lot of comments. Plus, I can see who's bookmarking. I can see the follows from what posts. And my ads in the background are running behind the organic market. So I know that it's doing well. So once you have your offer stack clear, once you understand the data and you know what your offer is, we spend the conversion content to just get the first goal. 20 views, or maybe it's 20 DMs, and then DMs to go to that page, or 20 conversations in the DM that's like, yes, I want this, to yield one sale. That's it. I want you to just think 20. And so in the conversion content framework, every post is going to invite them to take the next step, depending on what the intention is behind each one of your posts. You have the opportunity every single day to invite someone into your DMs to present them with an offer. So you'll have a promotional week where it's like direct ask to buy, and then all the rest of the time, you will be selling without selling, making a case for taking the next step. And each step makes a case for the next step. And that's what we do inside conversion content. And then lastly, the last step 4, is volume. You want to be number one in your niche, and you got to be the most visible. And volume comes through in one of two ways, meaning volume in just being the most visible, and volume being the number of touch points, meaning people need 7 to 14 touch points before making a buying decision, whether the buying decision is no, not yet, or yes, I'm in. We're hardwired to do that. I have clients that have spent thousands of dollars with me, and I ask them, what are the 7 main components of an offer? And they just can't remember. And it's not because they didn't watch the video. They did. There's a difference between understanding something and knowing something. And that requires reps. You would never squat once and never squat again. It requires reps. It requires implementation. It requires action. And the good news is, the more action you take, the more reps you'll get. And the even better news is, it doesn't matter how much time it takes, because it's really about what's your capacity, because it can take what it takes until it takes. Now, if you want to learn how and you want to go deeper, then check all our links out in the show notes. I've got free resources, tons of resources there for you, depending on what works best for you. And great job here, and I'll catch you in the next one.